What happens when America's closest trading partner decides it's had enough? Canada is now shifting its massive aluminum exports away from U.S. buyers and straight into Europe's hands. With billions of dollars on the line, could this decision crush the U.S. aluminum sector and spark a new economic Cold War? For decades, the U.S. and Canada have been locked together in a deeply integrated aluminum trade, a cornerstone of North American manufacturing. This partnership, solidified under agreements like NAFTA and its successor, the USMCA, created one of the world's most efficient cross-border supply chains. Canadian aluminum, produced just across the border, flowed seamlessly into American factories, becoming a vital, reliable component for U.S. industry. The economic logic was undeniable. Proximity reduced logistics costs, and shared standards ensured quality. Canada became the single largest supplier of primary aluminum to the United States, providing nearly half of all its primary imports. We're not just talking about raw metal, we're talking about high-grade, low-carbon aluminum, smelted using Canada's abundant hydroelectric power. This green aluminum became indispensable for America's most critical sectors. It formed the chassis of Ford F-150SS rolling-off assembly lines, the fuselages of Boeing jets, and the billions of beverage cans that stock supermarket shelves nationwide. It was a symbiotic relationship that fueled American manufacturing. But this decades-long stability was shattered. Citing national security concerns under a provision known as Section 232, Washington began imposing a series of escalating tariffs on its closest ally. The move stunned Ottawa and the industry alike. These weren't minor adjustments, they were punitive measures, with rates climbing as high as 50% on certain aluminum products. The very foundation of the trade relationship was suddenly treated as a threat, pushing Canadian producers to the financial brink and forcing a painful reevaluation of their largest market. The impact was immediate and severe. Industry leaders on both sides of the border warned that the tariffs were crippling supply chains, creating chaos and uncertainty. For Canadian smelters, primarily located in Quebec and British Columbia, the tariffs represented an existential threat, jeopardizing thousands of jobs in communities built around the aluminum industry. Faced with a market that had become unpredictable and hostile, Canadian producers were left with no choice. They had to urgently find new, reliable buyers for their high-quality product, or risk catastrophic losses, and now it appears they have found them. As one door was closing across the border, another was opening across the Atlantic. Europe, with its ambitious Green Deal and a surging demand for sustainably produced materials, saw a perfect match in Canada's low-carbon aluminum. For Canadian smelters, this wasn't just a rebound. It was an opportunity to align with a market that valued their key environmental advantage. A strategic pivot was underway, redirecting a river of metal that had flowed south for generations and charting a new course toward Europe. For decades, the flow of aluminum between Canada and the United States has been a bedrock of North American manufacturing. But that foundation is now cracking. Instead of continuing an uphill battle against unpredictable U.S. trade restrictions and tariffs, Canadian smelters are executing a decisive strategic pivot. They are redirecting massive volumes of high-grade aluminum to the European Union, a market hungry for the metal. This isn't a random shift, it's a calculated move toward a booming market. The EU's aggressive green transition is fueling unprecedented demand. Aluminum's lightweight and recyclable properties make it a critical component for the next generation of electric vehicles, for the towering turbines of offshore wind farms, and for sustainable construction projects sweeping the continent. While the U.S. market has become fraught with uncertainty, Europe is presenting itself as a stable, lucrative, and long-term partner. The economic consequences for the United States are staggering. Trade experts project this redirection could strip billions of dollars in annual exports from the cross-border relationship. This represents a huge blow to American industries that have built their entire supply chains around a steady, just-in-time Canadian supply. Automakers in the Rust Belt, aerospace giants, and even beverage producers now face a critical shortage, forcing them to scramble for alternative sources that are often more expensive and of lower quality, threatening to slow production and erode profits. And make no mistake, Canada isn't just testing the waters to gain leverage. This is a permanent realignment, solidified by long-term agreements. Leveraging the framework of the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, Canadian producers are signing multi-year contracts with European industrial leaders. The logistical overhaul is already in motion. Shipping routes are being redrawn, port infrastructure is being upgraded, and new transatlantic partnerships are being forged. This is more than a trade dispute. It's a conscious uncoupling, a bold move by Canada to diversify its economy and assert its independence on the global stage. So, what does this mean for the U.S. ? Higher costs for automakers, construction firms, and aerospace companies, supply shortages that could ripple across the economy, and greater reliance on countries like China or the Middle East to fill the gap. Analysts warn that if Canadian aluminum fully pivots away, the U.S. could face long-term instability in one of its most critical industries. And here's where the economic story explodes into a political firestorm. The saga begins with a signature policy of the Trump administration, the America First trade doctrine. In 2018, invoking national security concerns under Section 232, the White House imposed steep tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. The stated goal was simple and powerful: to shield American industries from what was described as unfair foreign competition and, in turn, protect American jobs. The move was hailed by some as a long overdue defense of the American worker, a bold strategy to reshore manufacturing and rebuild the nation's industrial might. But in the complex chessboard of global economics, every move has a countermove. The tariffs, intended to isolate competitors, may have instead isolated the United States. Now that strategy appears to be backfiring spectacularly. In a stunning geopolitical pivot, Canada, once the largest supplier of aluminum to the U.S., has turned its focus across the Atlantic. It's forging a powerful new trade alliance with the European Union, a bloc that was also targeted by the American tariffs. This isn't just a minor trade deal. It's a strategic realignment of global supply chains, estimated to be worth over $150 billion in initial trade flows. They are creating a new, tariff-free aluminum corridor, effectively designing a system that leaves the United States on the outside looking in. The shockwaves are now rattling Washington. For policymakers on Capitol Hill, the question is no longer just about foreign competition, but about self-inflicted wounds. Can the U.S. aluminum sector, from the smelters in Kentucky to the rolling mills in Indiana, truly survive this dramatic realignment? Downstream manufacturers, who rely on aluminum for everything from beverage cans to F-150S and Boeing jets, are caught in a vice. They face higher prices for raw materials at home, while their European counterparts gain access to tariff-free Canadian aluminum, giving them a significant competitive edge. The very policy designed to make America strong now raises a deeply unsettling question. In the quest for protection, has the United States inadvertently engineered its own economic isolation and weakened the very industries it sought to save? One thing is clear: Canada just sent a message loud and clear: they have options. The U.S. may soon find out that in the global aluminum game, loyalty has a price.